There is one, and I repeat only one good reason to watch Murder Drone's 6th episode, Dead End. It's for the Velociraptors.
Stand down. Hey! What did I just say?
Good, Uzi?
Hi there everyone, Lars here from Camille's Harem. Not just a podcast for novice writers by novice writers, but also a YouTube channel by novice writers for novice writers. Because writing is a horrifying adventure, it's more fun with friends, and Murder Drones Episode 6 broke me. I am serious when I say that it left me in a funky daze for at least 48 hours and required a long hike to sort everything out. And don't you worry, I am covering everything in this video. From the raptors, to the torture scenes, to the lore reveals, to Tessa helping us make sense of all of the events that we saw in episode 5, to the shipping, to V's sacrifice. Yeah, I'm going to get to all of that. If you want, however, you can jump around using the timestamps provided, but seriously, you'll want to stick around for the whole video and analysis, because I'm diving into everything, like I said, everything that makes this episode an absolute game changer, and arguably the most emotional and horrific addition to the entire series so far. And knowing that Liam will top himself before the end, I'm left quaking in my boots wondering what he's going to do next. Let's begin with the simplest of overviews to get us all on the same level of understanding. And yes, spoilers ahead, matey. Yarr! We start off with a brilliant orchestrated murder scene in an office where a poor worker drone is trying to save a fellow before getting stunned by these Terminator raptors called Sentinels. She is then torn viciously apart as someone watches from behind a security camera. After that, the episode picks up right where we left off last time in a three-way standoff between Uzi, N, V, Tessa, J, and Doll. Tessa immediately starts fangirling over N. Doll senses that not everything is going according to plan here, and hey, Tessa did try shooting her. So she steals the little key bug and teleports down the shaft into an old J.C. Jensen facility where Uzi's mom Nori had crawled out of. The newly reunited gang just as quickly splits the party, with Tessa ordering Jay to look after their ship. She then goes down with the other drones to give chase, and they discover piles of disassembly drone corpses. There is heavy tension in the air as Uzi mistrusts Tessa. V is questioning what is going on, N is trying to be diplomatic, and Tessa is clearly pursuing her own agenda. She says that as a human she can deal with whatever anti-drone measures the company has put into place, but quickly discovers that her authority is revoked. Not that it matters much because Alice and Bo capture the four of them. Here we get some classic torture porn setups, where Bo is ripping N open, but our lovable murderer drone is such a freaking Chad that he takes it all in stride and even befriends the weaponized baby. And that's a sentence I never thought I'd say. Bo is called away to help Alice take apart Uzi, who is putting up a fight using Absolute Solver. Tessa uses the distraction to cut herself and N loose, and they escape into the office space from earlier. While under torture and restraints by both magnets and straps, Uzi questions Alice about her mother. Alice is just though so far gone, she's blabbering hillbilly and disgusting nonsense in a massive kill count, and she's been collecting parts of other drones. Yeesh. However, she does reveal that Nori abandoned the other drones in the cabin fever program and left them all to die. It's only when Alice learns of the escape from Tessa and N that she stops taking Uzi apart. She calls the Sentinels, and the chase begins. Tessa is not affected by the Sentinels, which confuses the Terminator dinos, but her best attempt to pull a hiccup and tame them goes seriously wrong. It does provide enough of a distraction for Uzi, though, to use her powers and mess around with the security system, which lets the Sentinels out of their cages and truly into the rest of the rooms. Bo helps V escape after Alice is anticlimactically taken out. Kind of sad. But sadly, this deranged baby is also not long for this world either. But then Absolute Solver begins acting on its own, saving V and Uzi from the raptors. V surprises everyone by helping Uzi out of the room and taking care of her. Aside from that though, Tessa reveals to N what really happened after the Gala massacre. Absolute Solver had taken over Sin and teleported her away. It then took control of N, V, and J and used them as puppets to kill countless worker drones and make a spire of corpses before coming to the cabin fever floor. Tessa and a clone of J have come to find and eliminate infected drones and put a stop to Sin and Absolute Solver's plans. She also reveals that Earth has been destroyed and turned into whatever the heck that is. So things are looking rather grim for everyone, but it gets worse for N when he's told that Uzi is infected and must be dealt with. Tessa also admits that she hasn't told everything to V either. Again, Tessa is playing some games here, working on her own agenda. V doesn't like this and starts acting coldly towards her former master. The group hides and waits to snipe some dinos while N is freaking out over everything he's learned, and Uzi tries comforting him, which leads to some hand-holding. At the end of the Sentinel's maintenance corridor sits the secret elevator, which, hey, there's a sign for that. And Doll is there conveniently knocked out, an obvious trap, which Tessa falls for. Doll has set a trap to get them all butchered by the raptors as she takes the elevator down to the lab without any interference from the rest of the group. Cornered by the Sentinels, Tessa uses her blood to ward off the dinos, but the one from earlier sees through her trick and tries to kill them.
Clever girl.
But then V puts on her glasses, negating the dino's stunning rays, and hurls the bullet right back at the Sentinel.
Clever girl.
So the Raptor uses the severed disassembly drone arm to activate a sword!
Clever girl.
This fight is one of the most visceral ones in the series, because not only is V cutting loose and dominating against a warrior velociraptor, but Uzi uses Absolute Solver and bugs out, getting possessed by the entity, and has to slice off her hand. Tessa drags Uzi into the elevator, but before V can rejoin the group, another Sentinel calls the elevator up for the other dinos to commence with the slaughter. Losing her glasses, V sacrifices herself to cut the elevator loose and says that she trusts Uzi. Cut to credits.
Can you set me free? Will you take my soul away?
Whew, so a lot is going on in this episode. I'm going to start with discussing the lore and story before heading over to the ever-contentious debate surrounding shipping. And then I'm going to talk about V before rounding off this video with some speculation about what's to come next. First off, Tessa helps put a ton of stuff into perspective. So we now know that after the Gala massacre, Absolute Solver took Sin and went somewhere else. Humanity responded by creating the disassembly drones, using what they could learn from Absolute Solver in order to beat the entity. And oh boy, I get to finally use this clip!
I love it when I win.
I've been calling this since the pilot, that we have a third party responsible for what is going on in the Murder Drones story. And it all had to do with whatever was hacking the drones at the end of the pilot episode, which turned out to be Absolute Solver. And Absolute Solver got onto Earth and destroyed it, which was a massive shock in this episode.
Holy crap, what is she doing?
This isn't what I expected at all!
But since then, the humans have been using this great mistake to try and correct the consequences of their own hubris, which is right in line with the pilot episode where Uzi keeps bringing up how she will fix her mistakes in the same way that she made them. It sounds odd at first, but it really means confronting your own choices head on. In any case, we can now be a bit more sure of the potential timeline for the events we saw in N and V's memories back in episode 5. The Gala massacre played out with Tessa present, unable to stop anything, while Sin toyed around with everyone and butchered them. She probably then went back to N and saved him from the tree, which was when she showed up with the human hand in her mouth that we got a glimpse of back in episode 4. And then she vanished. Human authorities and the J.C. Jensen Company stepped in and realized what kind of horrors they had on their hands, and they made the disassembly drones, very likely from studying the horrors Sin had crafted down in the basement. They used their tech to make clones of the destroyed drones to enhance the numbers of their army, before then sending them out to hunt down all the other infected drones who had been affected by Absolute Solver. However, creating the disassembly drones seemed to have played right into Absolute Solver's digital hands. This allowed the program to take over J, V, and N and send them to Copper 9 with the express instructions to make a spire of corpses and then to get to the Cabin Fever labs, where many of the drones had become infected due to the humans on the planet studying the program to develop a means to destroy it. What this very likely means is that Absolute Solver wants to come to Copper 9 to overall destroy the planet and get rid of whatever measures J.C. Jensen had created in order to stop it. But a gateway needed to be open. A gateway that will be opened via a massive antenna of dead drones, very similar to what we saw happening with Sin at the beginning of episode 5. It's all part of a weird, twisted process, much like the demonic symbols and witchcraft painted all over Sin and Tessa's rooms. Absolute Solver then really isn't just a computer virus, but a thoroughly evil entity that acts like an eldritch god, which needs to be properly summoned in order to consume different worlds. And while all of this is happening, J.C. Jensen has been sending a bunch of disassembly drones to Copper 9 in order to infiltrate their old lab, but they were stopped by their own creations and Alice, who weaponized the compound. In a weird way, this is again all played into Absolute Solver's plans, because N, J, and V could easily hide in plain sight among all the chaos and death getting rained down on the planet by the company, and Alice going full "the hills have eyes" and hostile was something I was not expecting. It was seriously unnerving to watch her torture Uzi. Just another Liam Vickers nod to famous horror stories right here. I think it's likely that Nori and Doll's parents escaped the labs because they feared Absolute Solver and what it was doing to them. They also probably feared whatever the humans were doing to them as a part of a countermeasure. It's possible that the drones in the lab were guinea pigs for getting Absolute Solver into them to see if any sort of modifications to their coding or to their bodies could make it possible to stop the infection or control it. Modifications and infections that were very likely passed on to their children, Doll and Uzi, which is why when they use Absolute Solver, it looks different. Learning through Tessa and Alice about the Cabin Fever labs, it only further cements this idea that the humans were trying to solve their own mistakes in the same way that they made it, bringing the series full circle. While a good philosophy, it clearly hasn't worked for them though, and in many ways it hasn't worked out for Uzi either. And speaking of Uzi, we have confirmation now that the more that she uses Absolute Solver, the more she invites it to take control of her. And I will address Absolute Solver's machinations later on in the video. But for now, I want to talk raptors. Oh boy, this episode had me at the Velociraptor robots. I am a sucker for dinosaurs. I've loved them ever since watching Jurassic Park as a kid. And ever since then, I've wanted a fantasy world with fantasy warrior raptors. And dang it, I put them into my own series, The Legend of the Ten Lords, and I love how Liam leaned so heavily into them, including the raptor sounds and the toe clacking. And they just make great obstacles for the heroes with their speed, teamwork, stunning rays, and killer claws. I would love them even more if they just didn't go after V. But in all seriousness, JC Jensen had a wonderful idea on their hands. They should have let these guys loose all over Copper 9 to wipe out all the infected drones. Also, let's talk about what we can learn from Alice and Bo's horrifying workshop of atrocities. It would appear that all disassembly drones have a core that was either engineered by Absolute Solver or by JC Jensen as a failsafe to rebuild dead murder drones. This would allow them to keep coming back again and again and again, learning from their failures and keep on killing. Alice and Bo cut these cores out of their victims, and they've heated them in an oven to slow them down, because without oil, they can't cool down and function properly. We also see that magnets don't just get you high like what we saw Drone Shaggy doing back in episode 4, they can completely screw with any drone's processing and slow them down. Alice purposefully was trying to take Uzi apart, not just to prevent her from using Absolute Solver, but to collect parts. But she was too cocky and thought she had everything in the bag, so she didn't finish butchering Uzi and decided to watch the Sentinels do their work rather than finishing off the obvious threat. But I think it's again important to note that just all the parts that she has harvested, how she's used them to enhance her own body, how she's used them to enhance Bo. And it's really sad that all of those upgrades given to this little demon baby didn't help him to survive this episode. So yeah, whoo boy, we get some really weird confirmation of drone cannibalism, and not just simply that they eat each other, but how they can cannibalize each other's parts to give each other upgrades. Yeesh. And how could I possibly forget about Tessa? I might be low-key in love with this crazy Aussie girl. She is pretty much insane and overconfident with only the dumbest and most convenient of luck to back up all that bravado. But there's also a real sinister side to her as well, as seen by all the close-ups of the drones looking into her visor, seeing themselves reflected coldly back. To me, this says that Tessa is ready to commit the biggest atrocities to get revenge on Absolute Solver and rescue what remains of humanity. This makes her a chaotic, dangerous character to Uzi and N, but also potentially a valuable ally should they need one. However, it is pretty clear that Tessa is acting of her own volition and pursuing her own agenda. She's not just some mindless follower for JC Jensen, which is a good thing, but it's hard to know what game she's playing, especially since she dismissed Jay. This has a lot of people suspecting that she's another villain or being controlled by Absolute Solver, but I don't think that that is the case. Given everything we've seen with Absolute Solver and what it can do and the fact that Sin kept Tessa alive, I think there's more at play. I'd argue that this is a 4D chess game between an eldritch deity and a young girl looking for revenge. But then again, why dismiss Jay? She's such a capable warrior. I think it's so Tessa can have an ace up her sleeve to call down if necessary. But what we should really be talking about is how Tessa managed to rewrite an entire Sentinel's coding by infecting it with her blood. However, I love how it tries to make be a good dingo become its primary objective. Lastly, before I jump over to the topic of shipping, I want to share with you all that when the episode premiered, I wasn't able to watch it in real time. So I listened to it on my phone as I did the work that I had to do. It was a frightening and bizarre experience because I had no idea what was going on. I just got the sounds and the dialogue. Murder Drones has always done a fabulous job of combining dialogue with visuals to communicate the whole story, which is an art that is seemingly lost on a lot of Hollywood. But being a storyboard artist, I think Liam is more aware than many other writers in his profession how essential the visual cues, clues, and information is in order to enthrall and inform the audience. Now, with that bit out of the way, let's finally talk about some shipping.
Ew.
Don't date my robot, please.
He's his own person!
I just recently did a video on the love triangle within the series between N, V, and Uzi, and by all accounts, it seems as though we have our answer. Newsy has set sail. Or has it? Full disclosure before I commence with analyzing all the shipping content we got in this episode, and I do mean all of it, I am fine with either ship. Newsy is a sweet, endearing friendship that blossoms into romance, and Envy is a story of love at first sight and redemption. Either one is good, and I'm fine with the other ships that this episode hints at. I just want what is best for the overall story. Though with that being said, I am a long shot shipper. As a veteran of the shipping game, I love it when an unlikely couple struggles through the story to get together. It just feels more worth it to me. With the pilot episode, I was all aboard with Newsy because of how different they were and how N was in a toxic crush on V. In my opinion, it was liberating, it was cute, redeeming, and an obvious long shot. But then episode 2 rolled around and we got the flashback and I was like, oh, wow, that was cute. And now things start making sense. Suddenly, I realized that N getting together with V was far more unlikely, and the twisted corner of my brain where shipping happened said I needed to root for Envy. So, as a writer and fan of murder drones, either ship is okay with me. I see the merits and fun in both of them. But the diseased part of me roots for Envy at the moment because, well, it's just such a long shot, and it still has a chance, as I will show you later. But to address everyone who has been angry with Newsy jumping to the forefront, let me point out a few things that we see in this episode. Uzi is constantly being supportive of N, while V is distant. And for the more neutral and romantically reserved N, Uzi takes the lead, and he reciprocates her actions. They have had a long time to build up a supportive friendship. They've been through eldritch horrors, betrayals, a bloody prom, prejudice, more eldritch nightmares, attempted murder, and they've also shared their past with each other. That is a strong bond, and it's powerful. If they are indeed an item by the end of the episode and the end of the season as a whole, it is a relationship well earned. And it's cute how everything plays out. N has shown great concern for her too. While I see many people saying that he treats her like a sister, I would argue that he has treated her as an equal, which is essential for a healthy romantic relationship. Now, that's looking at everything though face value, from a face value perspective. I said in my last shipping video that it is essential to go by character assessment and not just visual clues, because the hand-holding, while very solid evidence for Newsy in this episode, can also be reasonably argued as N blushing and sweating because the guy is in absolute danger with the vessel for absolute solver in his best friend and holding his hand, and he's dealing with a lot of emotions at the time. I must admit that if we start then getting analytical, this episode also supports Envy almost as much as it does Newsy. N defers to V throughout the episode, looking for her reactions and her approval, which, as Rainstorm Riddles put out in their excellent character analysis, V is in no condition to readily return or reciprocate. However, V continuously makes it a point that she is better than Uzi, more valuable. I wonder why. Oh yeah, it's because she wants Uzi to realize that she is the most important thing in N's life. And she decides that it is best to save Uzi because she knows that N cares for her, showing immense character development on V's part and showing that once again, V does what she does because she believes that it is best for N. V is doing all of this because she cares so much for him. She fights off the raptors to save N. She's freaking wearing the same glasses that N returned to her. Just as N tried to save her, she now tries to save him. It's so darn beautiful. I mean, even Tessa sounds like she's on board because she knows how much N cares for her. And if you think that Envy is 100% over, well, I'll get to that in a moment. However, it must be acknowledged as well in terms of shipping that Jay is all about that Tessa. And she is visibly disturbed, disappointed, and heartbroken because she's ordered to watch the ship. But Tessa isn't so bothered by this because she's got N back.
Tessa?
You're a mimic! Too tall, handsome, is toxic.
Tessa is very attached to N, and it's not just a girl clinging to one of her favorite toys. She is petting N as he flies her into the labs. She seeks him out first and foremost. Her body language clearly communicates a sense of closeness to him, and that she doesn't share any of that with the other drones. And then, of course, she tells Uzi not to take away her robot. As weird as it is, Tessa is into N. Harem ending confirmed? Highly unlikely, because all ships are in danger of sinking at this point. V could be dead, Uzi is possessed, and N has to eliminate her. Or Tessa will do it. Tessa could probably die as a squishy human, which means no ship with J or N. And if Absolute Solver destroys Copper 9, then even Khan and Doors will sink. So this episode has ratcheted up the stakes by seemingly killing V, showing that anything can happen from this point on. No one is safe. And yet, I say there's still a chance that V isn't dead. And I'll give 4 reasons for why that is. But first, it's remarkable how her apparent demise has sparked so many reactions and conversations in the fanbase. People are so attached to her character by this point, and I quickly want to address why that is. Liam has executed a phenomenal character study and arc with V. She is introduced as a psychopath murderer in episode 1, and she does her best to kill the worker drones and carve up N in that same episode. However, after episode 2 shows us that there was a genuine connection, a spark between her and N before becoming disassembly drones, her character starts becoming more complex, and it's clear that upon rewatching episode 1 that she is putting up a facade to trick N. And why? Well, in episode 3 she says that she's doing everything for N's own good, even if he hates her for it. Was that because she remembered the spark between them? Despite being a demented murderer, V reveals that she does have a conscience, and she can make friends with others. She is fighting a greater evil in order to protect N, and she's kept the glasses that he returned to her back when Sin possessed her body. It turns out that that moment in the basement probably played out in a similar way in real life, because otherwise, why would she have those glasses? Why would those glasses mean anything to her unless N had actually given them to her back in the past? So it would seem that regardless of whatever happened to V when she was made into a disassembly drone, she remembers her connection with N and has to a certain degree loved him this entire time. That makes her death so tragic, because she could have been happy with N, but felt that she had to be the way that she was in order to go a better route to protect him. She was making friends and was even accepted by the worker drones despite who she is, but she always remained aloof and apart. She had a job to do, but couldn't see that job through at the very end. She wants revenge on Sin and Absolute Solver, but fell short. The one thing she could do was protect Uzi, someone that she has despised for so long. It's a small bit of redemption for a very troubled character. V is a tragic figure, and Liam pulled it off brilliantly. That is why so many of us ache for her apparent death and want her to somehow come back, because we want V to have a chance to find full redemption, to have friends, to belong somewhere, to even have love, because after everything she's gone through, people want that for her. And that is how I, as a writer, know that Liam has done a wonderful job with her character, because he made us care for a murdering psychopath. That is masterful writing. So, could V have another chance at life, at redemption? Well, here are my 4 reasons for her potential return. My first 2 reasons are world-building clues that were given in this episode, and the last 2 are more narratively driven. For one thing, Tessa said that the most valuable drones were cloned so they could be reused. And who is more valuable than the best killer aside from Sin? V held off Tessa and Jay in her Eldritch form, and as a disassembly drone, she wiped out so many worker drones and infected with brutal ease. And the way that she deals with the Sentinels clearly denotes her skill, standing up to what people really want in a murder drone like herself. So there's a very good chance that she's been cloned off-world and could come back as a clone. Secondly, Jay can still come and save her. And why would that happen? Because even though Jay is loyal to a fault and follows orders, she needs character development too. For Jay, standing up to orders and doing what is right would be the biggest bit of character development she could have at this moment. And there's no way that she would just let Tessa die. I'll bet that she returned, feeling uneasy about her master and what's going on down in the labs, and rushes in to find V getting attacked and helps save her fellow disassembly drone from this onrush of Sentinels. Third reason, never assume anyone is dead unless you have seen the body, driven a stake through its heart, and buried it deep within a slab of concrete. We didn't see V die. It just looks very, very probable, with all the right music and tragic send-off, with N crying out for her as he plummets down into the labs. But without a body, Liam could be pulling a fast one on us, playing with our collective heartstrings. Fourth and finally, even though V's death would be perfectly tragic, and it would wrap up her arc in a sad but beautiful and honestly good resolutive way, there is a chance for another kind of resolution between her and N. This isn't required though by any means, but after N made such a big deal about having a crush on her, and reinforcing that statement with an in-depth look into their past, and N still properly has not voiced his thoughts or feelings even about the newsy moment that seemingly let the ship sail, there should be closure with N and his feelings for V, whether they remain romantic or not. In some form or another, N should confront V and come to terms with whatever their relationship is. So there you have it. V isn't 100% out of the game yet. That means that she could have an epic return. The shipping debate isn't shut and done. And let's not forget that Liam really likes V. Now, if she is dead, this is still a great send-off and powerful message to the audience that anything can happen and that no one is safe. That the stakes are high, they're real, and the end game is going to be vicious. So now that we've arrived to it, let's talk about what happens next. The way that I see things developing here is that Absolute Solver has orchestrated all of the events by bringing N, V, and J to Copper 9. Through sin, it knows their dynamic and their worth, and that their relationship would perfectly work to drive them to make the spire and find the lab. Tessa was left alive because she would do everything in her power to get back at Absolute Solver, which also plays into the entity's hands. The corpse spire is now complete. The antenna that is needed to summon Absolute Solver fully to the planet is ready. All that is needed is for an infected drone to make it into the lab and complete the summoning process. Tessa should have killed the drones, but since she is dancing to her own beat, mistakes have been made. Absolute Solver understands this. It doesn't need to fully possess Uzi or anyone else so long as they are all motivated to keep going further. It just needs to step in and help them along on their quest down into the lab. And though Uzi booted Sin from her position as administrator over N and V, she and Doll are still keys to completing what Absolute Solver has planned. Now, I think this will also still come to a head because while J.C. Jensen in space seems to have been a really stupid company overall, the fact of the matter is that they were working on something really dangerous down in the Cabin Fever labs. And there's a very good chance that they actually did discover a means by which they could contain or destroy Absolute Solver. Absolute Solver is not just coming to Copper 9 to destroy the planet and continue along with its process of creating the singularity, but it needs to destroy whatever potential weapon or danger was created by the humans in order to defeat it. So I think that there is absolutely a resolution for both sides down there in the lab, and that will be revealed once we get to episode 7. So what I suspect will happen in episode 7 is that we're going to finally learn everything that's been going down, and that Doll or Uzi will be used in activating the Absolute Solver's last gambit, and either it or Tessa will reveal what this goal has been the whole time, why the Absolute Solver is annihilating all of these other worlds, which is probably tied into some eldritch monster's ultimate goal of annihilating all creation and unifying life in one singular state of death. That's what all the creepy, spooky, nutty stuff is saying to me. Episode 7 will absolutely end on a cliffhanger where N must make the fateful choice regarding Uzi. And I suspect that Jay will come to help save the day as everything goes to hell in a handbasket, which is also our best chance to see if V is alive before the end. And we're going to get a sick reveal about what the singularity truly is. That is what I foresee. Alrighty, coming to the end of this long review and analysis, let me just say this. I haven't been this invested in a show for a while. Amphibia is a close second, but I haven't had an episode eat at me like this since probably Gravity Falls. V's demise rocked me to my core. I didn't realize just how much I loved her character until I saw her resigning herself to death. But it was also a gut punch to see Earth shattered and made into this eldritch monument to destruction. Uzi suddenly getting possessed and acting erratic had me wanting to scream at my screen.
I'm so invested in the lives of these characters!
Not many stories have the gall to pull off a stunt like episode 6. It went dark with everything that happened. It raised the stakes. It gave plenty of answers that finally brought so much about the characters, their world, and the plot together while still leaving the biggest mysteries unanswered. And not everyone can pull off a cliffhanger like V's send-off. Believe you me, it was a visually horrifying episode with a claustrophobic set, fantastic monsters, and sick twists. In many ways, Dead End is the payoff to everything else we've seen so far in terms of atmosphere, danger, and character arcs. The descent into madness was natural, even if people are saying that Newsy felt a bit forced. So much of this episode flows at a good, thrilling pace. This is the kind of excitement and impact that our shows, books, and movies should have. This is entertaining, but we've just find so little of it in so much of our other media. It's a shame that Hollywood didn't pay attention to Liam's pitches back in the day, but maybe we're the richer for it since Glitch took up his project. And I can't wait for episode 7, and I know it's going to be simply amazing. Anyway, I think that will do for this video. I want to hear from you what you think about my review, analysis, insights, and speculations. I know many of you have strong opinions, especially concerning V and shipping, so let's hear them. In the meantime, while we wait for episode 7 and are still recovering from Dead End, entertain yourself with some self-published books. You want more Velociraptors? Then check out my Legend of the Ten Lords series. Do you need a laugh and some fluffy romance after all the shipping nonsense? Check out my book, Notice Me, Send Pie. Or if you want a thrilling adventure, check out Bleed, Steam, and Steel. Thank you for accompanying us on this adventure through murder drones and writing. And until the next video, y'all, tschüss.
Right. Might be some security specifically against you guys. Human-made security this human can control.
You bred raptors.
Where do I go when I'm out? I'm right behind you.
Ellie, boot up the door locks!
Maybe.
Anything the screw since plan.
I believe that's the heart of